Hello, I'm FPX Toycat, and many people have been asking for natural disasters to be added to Minecraft for years, and the official response has been no, we won't alter people's existing worlds, but obviously when it comes to seeds, the rules are entirely different, and so meteorite hits, sea level rises, and even foreign objects entering the atmosphere are entirely on the table, which is what I'll show you in today's seeds. Like this first seed, which is from Fragrant Result 186, a name you'll recognize if you follow the channel a lot. Already from spawn, it's incredible. There's a flower forest with a hill in front of you, and behind you there's a cherry grove and a sunflower plains, but it gets even better if you keep heading towards the savannah with the lava coming out of it, because shortly after passing a village that's in the wrong biome and a ruined portal which is floating in one of the weirdest ways you've ever seen. It's rare to see the full extent of a ruined portal, but you can right here. Going just past the mountain behind it leads you to an astounding discovery, because a meteorite must have hit here and destroyed all of the terrain. You can see just how messed up it really is and just how wide of a crater hole this is, but even more interesting, there is still a bit of a hole where that water starts to fall down a giant gap. This is a lake, but not just any lake, a lake that then flows into a giant hole that is created inside of it, something that is fascinating to look at by itself. Where else in Minecraft can you be in a cave with water pouring down from on top of you and then break just a few blocks and end up in that very same water? Nowhere else, I tell you, because this is insanity, one of the deepest bodies of water you'll ever find, and on top of it is of course a floating village you've already seen. This village follows the same policy that I use for international travel, which is that if something bad's just happened to a place, be that terror, an earthquake, or anything else, it's unlikely to happen again, and so I hope these guys luck that there's not a second meteorite strike in the same place, and indeed, I hope that the pillagers don't learn to swim. And one of the important things to note is this is just disaster 1, although I do think this second one is much more fun, because look at it, it's a village which has a slight issue with its pathway, and that is that it's being blocked by a woodland mansion. And wild enough is the fact that I have to say, this isn't the first time we've seen something like this. Villages and mansions going into the same spot isn't entirely wild, and the fact that you can find both of these in a similar body of water is also not the craziest thing. No, instead, the natural disaster here is boating related, because someone was trying to navigate their boat through the sea. They discovered at the last minute, because of a lack of a lighthouse, there was no other way through, and so what they did is they planted their boat solidly right here at the very top, making for the easiest shipwreck loot and treasure maps you will ever find in Minecraft, although admittedly you do have to deal with the fact that there is a hole straight from the bottom here into the woodland mansion. I cannot imagine the look on your face you'd have for the first time if you loaded up this seed not knowing this was here and questioned why the ceiling was orange, only to realize there was a secret room up there. You would not believe that that was a shipwreck that happened to generate there. You would be so sure you discovered an Easter egg, but no, this is a weird natural disaster, if you're a boat rider at least. It's one of the weirdest differences between mansions on platforms, that they're birch wood floored on the Bedrock version instead of oak on the Java, but even more interesting is sometimes that floor becomes the ceiling for some reason, and so yeah, this is a woodland mansion. To kill all woodland mansions, it doesn't have as many secret rooms as some, but you better believe this is something that will be a lot of fun. And if you really want a fun Nether spawn, make sure to use the ruined portal just to the side here, because when you get to the Nether, you'll have a really good and enjoyable time with absolutely no disasters and noises that indicate Geiger counters. Anyway, with that said, the third seed is interesting too. In fact, I'll even load it up in survival so we can see it together, what an experience you would have on this one, because genuinely, I thought I saw the craziest thing a couple of weeks ago when I shared an outpost in the middle of nowhere with a couple of things near it, but this is something even weirder. You spawn in a ice spikes biome. I mean, you could argue this was a natural disaster, but then you'd be arguing that the Arctic doesn't exist, although I'm just saying, has anyone been there? Seems real suspicious that we all claim there's both an Arctic and an Antarctic, but we don't have any pictures of the real Arctic. Seems real suspicious to me. Although more seriously, if you just travel to these coordinates right here, you'll find something very odd that perhaps shouldn't exist. It's a pillager outpost sitting in the middle of an ocean over there. Very interesting, sure, but also you'll notice just next to it is a jungle temple. Pillager outpost and a jungle temple, sure, that's incredible, that's insane, that's real broken. That is a sign that something has gone missing here. All of the terrain, everything else. Was there an earthquake? Did sea levels rise? is, who knows for sure. However, the one thing we do know with 100% certainty is that it's not an outpost and a jungle temple, but as you get a little closer to the first jungle temple, you'll realize there is in fact a second one. This used to be an entire rainforest like the Amazon, but now it has risen to sea levels of this height, and instead we just have a couple of temples hanging out in the middle of nowhere next to the remaining 4 trees of the biome. This is a disaster from the past. Obviously, this is a bit of a lore dive, and so the equivalent real life lore dive is all you've got to do if you want to save the real life Amazon is buy from Amazon.com, which I'm pretty sure, I've heard a lot about the website, I'm pretty sure it's a way to conserve the rainforest, right? That's why it must be called that. Speaking of things being called things, I want to mention that the Bedrock version of the game is so called because it runs on the Bedrock engine, not because there is more Bedrock here than anywhere else. However, something interesting that you can find is that all of these seeds will work between Bedrock and Java, just with slightly different structure generation, and so I want to share with you a Java seed that was so cool I couldn't not share it, even though as a Bedrock player, I can't appreciate it. So here I am on the medium salmon edition of the game. As you can probably tell from my hotbar that is suspiciously close to the bottom of the screen, as well as the fact that I've got a fun Minecon cape. But anyway, we're here on this version of the game to show you a seed where if you go just a few hundred blocks away from spawn, you'll find this. It is a plains village that is generated into a mountain. Exactly how and why this happened is fascinating, but it does leave you with a village which is clearly prepared for a warmer climate existing here in the mountains. Clearly that proves the mountains got cold after the village got here, and that tells us that something caused everything to go cold. Combine this with a giant cave, a dripstone cave in fact, and I think it's clear that there was a giant missile that hit here, causing the world and the biome to go into extreme nuclear winter. That is something that is backed up by the extreme spikes you see everywhere, giving you just 2 choices: live in the radiation and die from the spikes that way, or live in the cold and die from the winter. What a beautiful set of choices these guys have. A natural disaster you can enjoy from the comfort of your own world with your strangely sized salmon. Although I can rag on Java all I like, but ultimately it does have a lot of things over the Bedrock engine of the game. Namely, there's quite a few bugs that are addressed timely, or at least look like they should be there, whereas there are some features that come to Bedrock and it's like, did you even want this to work correctly? And a great example of this is not the caves, which I love, but instead comes all the way here at the top of the world, because one of the most interesting issues is that the Trail Ruins is Minecraft's newest structure in the base game right now. It has been out for most of the year, about half a year if we're being fair actually, almost 6 months now, and yet you can still find it with a big gap between the surface and what's below. And the reason I bring that up is because right over here, in my beautifully circular render distance, you'll find a big waterfall, and you know what's causing this waterfall? You'll really love it. At the very top of the world here is a Trail Ruins with its suspicious gravel. And then, if you want to find the rest of the Trail Ruins, it's not directly below it as the structure is intended to be. Instead, you go down about 40 blocks, and here is some more Trail Ruins. But if you want to find the rest of the Trail Ruins, well then what you'll want to do is so high that I don't think I can reasonably show it off in one shot. At the top of this frame right there is the lower part of the Trail Ruins, and if we go way down, we're talking 200 blocks down to reach the surface of the water, then you'll realize you're at the point where, nope, there's no Trail Ruins here. You've got to keep on going, and once you get to about Y30, here are the cauldrons, here are the random bricks, and indeed, here are the ladders, which represent the rest of the Trail Ruins. This is a structure that is separated by 200 blocks, and although it's not like this in everyone's world, the fact that it's somewhat like this in everyone's world, just minus the 200 block gap, it's more like 20 blocks, is a sign of a very broken structure. At what point will this be fixed? Is this just going to become how the structure is on Bedrock? I'm a big believer in the idea of, Occam's razor, or Hanlon's razor. Do not attribute to malice that which can be explained by, inaptitude, basically. And so I do believe that they're not maliciously trying to keep it broken. I do believe that it is a really hard problem to solve from their perspective, but that makes it even more interesting that there's some issue of the Trail Ruins that is so hard to solve that one of the flagship features from 1.20 is not working even all of this time later. Also, a weird thing, by the way, is the fact that my skin doesn't really seem to work on the Bedrock edition when I look up, but when I look down, everything looks fine. Anyway, with that said, I hope you all enjoyed today's video. The goal was to go for the shortest seed Sunday possible, where I could show you 5 astounding seeds, and I hope that you have received and enjoyed that. If you like learning about seeds, you can check out the playlist, which will be linked in a few seconds, and otherwise, I hope you enjoyed this video. Please do consider subscribing to see more weird, wacky things from across the world, and realistically from Fragrant Result 186, and yeah, I hope that you all enjoyed, because I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye.